Okay, everybody, we are live. I'm Christian Hampton. Welcome to Wolf Clan Media. I don't particularly enjoy theater too much, so I haven't been keeping up with the recent trial. But my guest today has been keeping up with the trial, and he's actually been keeping up with the incident since it took place. If I'm not mistaken, he even did a little bit of an analysis and research into it. So, without further ado, I'll just let him take it from there. Cliche Guevara, how are you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. I just wanted to get you on here and see what your thoughts were on the Rittenhouse verdict today.
Oh, I have so many. I guess right off the bat, I was glad to, just as a human being, I was glad to see the kid not go to prison for the rest of his life for defending himself. Um, but it also kind of worries me that so many conservatives and people on the right view this as like a big win, and oh, the justice system still works, and that's kind of a blue pill to me, honestly, and it bothers me to see that a little bit because if the justice system were actually functioning, then there wouldn't have really been a trial in the first place, and
Mm.
the riots wouldn't have happened, and like the whole thing at the end of the day is a psyop, in my opinion, but in the sense that it's being used as a psyop. This is something I've been debating a lot with like the crowd of conspiracy guys that think everything is fake and everything is all crisis actors and everything's CGI, and that type.
Oh
And
yeah.
what I keep having to explain to them is that that's not that those kinds of psyops do take place on rare occasions, but that's not really how you do something like that. Like you just what the intelligence agencies are going to do if they want to get a right-wing militia guy to shoot a left-wing protester, for example, they're not going to like set up the entire thing and use agents and crisis actors. They're just going to put a bunch of those people together and let it happen organically and then pounce on it with the media.
And when we
That
see those, we don't see 2 week trials that are played out on national television for everybody to see, like and it usually ends a lot differently as well.
Totally
Most
right.
cases.
But speaking of letting that happen organically, I think that's and this is a point that a lot of my left wing friends are making, rightfully so, is that in Kenosha that night, the police did push the protesters or rioters into the armed right wingers.
Hmm.
And this is a tactic that they did. This is what they did at Charlottesville too. It was very purposely done at Charlottesville, and it's a tactic that's used all the time when they're trying to get shit to pop off. And
Right. Okay. So that's why I wanted to reach out to you and get your opinion on all this, because I haven't really had a side. Again, I haven't watched it, looked into it, but for me, it's been to me like a theater thing, So I haven't really picked a side, so to speak,
right.
morally, like just been looking at it. And for me, what stood out was the judge, Bruce Schroeder, right? So they said that he instructed the jury to consider that the teen provoked an attack, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then when I looked at who Judge Bruce Schroeder was, I saw that he went to Marquette University. So when I looked at Marquette University, sure enough, in line with some of the research you and I have been doing for the documentary we're working on, Marquette University happens to be a private Jesuit research university established in 1881. And it's actually part of the Association of Jesuit Colleges and Universities and one of the largest Jesuit private colleges. So sure enough, this judge here is a Jesuit trained and educated judge. So go
He's
ahead.
also distantly related. He's distantly related to Rittenhouse as well. Um,
Oh,
I saw,
really?
yeah, I saw some researchers making a big deal out of that. I didn't see a big enough connection to be like, oh my God, they're all in on it together. And I mean, if you think about like small town Midwestern towns, like of course everybody's related, like on a you
Wisconsin.
know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'll get you that intel. They are definitely related on a long enough timeline. I did see that genealogy breakdown.
Well, that's interesting. And yeah, you make a good point about small towns. And I mean, it's Kenosha, Wisconsin. And yeah, that judge was, raised there and he went to school there. But I just thought it was interesting that he was Jesuit educated.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's not surprising. I would have to see more. I really want to start digging into his whole career and see what other um, types of trials he's worked on and what his associations are. I know he's a registered Democrat. He's not like some right-wing chud or anything like that, but
Right.
um yeah, I am curious. And that's another point I made to a lot of the conspiracy guys is like, you know, if this is all in op and everyone's an actor and they're all in on it together, then that should be pretty clear by digging into any, you know, the lawyer, the judge, any of them, dig into their career and their backstory. And if that's the case, you'll find that to be the case, you know. But
Well, yeah, and again, like it just reeked to me, and this is why I reached out to you, because of some of the research you and I have been doing. You know, recently I've stumbled thanks to the now vanished researcher Amy Says WTF, Black Nobility, right? And you start seeing these connections to families in Catholic Church. So you see this guy went to St. James Catholic Church in Kenosha, and he's part of the member of the German American Society, and even has an adopted child born on September 11th. And then you tell me that he's related to Rittenhouse. So you know, these weird things with numbers and relationships and family. You know, you always see this thing, and you just, you know, you got the normies who chalk it up to coincidence, but then you got the very fringe people like me who are like, well, that's
well,
weird.
how's this? There's more too. There's I saw some like occult researchers posting about the blood moon alignment and some astrological stuff going on today. And then it's in Catholicism, it's the feast day of the patron saint of the falsely accused.
Today.
Um, yeah, and there were
Oh, you're
there were a
kidding.
couple others. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but there were a couple other like total occult lineups. But that Catholic one was pretty interesting for sure.
Wow, that's very interesting. I did not know that at all. I'm gonna have to look at that, especially if you say something like the falsely accused. I mean, that's very interesting. I'd like to know.
I think what probably bothers me the most about this whole situation, and this is why I've personally gotten suckered into like debates and Twitter fights over the subject and stuff, is that like even like today, let me read you a byline from the Independent, which is a mainstream media outlet. And the headline is Kyle Rittenhouse cleared of murder after shooting dead two Black Lives Matter protesters.
Mhm.
Full story, teenager who shot three black men with rifle found not guilty on all charges.
Right. So you see there, it's I predict that that's the media doing, you know, similar to what they've done before, like even back in '92 to start the LA riots.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what this whole story is all about. That's why it's all over the media. They're trying to use it to cause more division and more riot. Duh, everybody knows that. Um, it's just I guess like my point is that it's been 15 months and a televised trial, and you're still getting the basic facts. He didn't shoot any black people. like how is this even possible that people are still talking about how his mom gave him a gun and drove him to the riots and he crossed state lines with a weapon, and like literally like the most basic facts pertaining to the situation and the trial are still being gotten wrong by the majority of people.
Mm.
And that include like I have friends of mine that are deep research. I mean, these are guys that are hanging out on the CIA website and reading declassified documents all day. And even they're getting this basic 101 level research project wrong. And that just blows my mind how wrong everybody's getting it when the facts have been available since the night it happened.
Mm.
Like,
Interesting. Yeah. So I guess you could chalk that up to disinformation being put out,
oh yeah, yeah.
and just social media in general, with the way people just, you know, put their opinion and repeat other opinions as fact. And
Well, like the Young Turks just did a retraction a few days ago, which was hilarious because in their retraction, they actually got even more stuff wrong than they got in the first place.
really, the Young Turks.
Yeah, but just last week they had to do a retraction and they're like, oh, so because we didn't actually watch the video before covering the story, we didn't realize that it was actually Rosenbaum chasing Kyle. We thought Kyle was chasing Rosenbaum. This was last week while the trial was half over. Like that, this is what I'm saying. Like people
Mm.
have gotten it so incredibly wrong that there's no way to have a discussion about the issue because
Mm.
yeah. nobody knows what really happened.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't really know that aspect of it. I didn't really, yeah, because again, for me, I haven't paid attention to it because I just assumed it was what we just said is like a psyop to divide and conquer and to get us, to, I did assume that. Well, I've seen a lot of it's like impossible for me to even get any left wing anything on YouTube. The algorithm is totally just feeds me Tucker Carlson and
Yep.
whatever other Sky News nonsense it thinks I want to hear. It thinks I just want to hear how much everyone hates Biden. So like I can't even, I'm not getting fed any kind of left wing anything. But if I go look for it, I can easily see the language there in the media, and I'm like, okay, like what you just read, for example, even with getting the facts wrong, you can just see like, aside from totally incorrect information, they're pushing an agenda to like start shit. There's no other
Oh,
way to put it. It's the
absolutely.
media starting shit as usual, right?
Yeah, they're begging for riots, and I've heard a lot of people theorize that that's why the jury actually took so long, is because they wanted it to be
Yeah.
Friday night, for the riots. But
It's crazy. When I went to go look up the verdict here, Google tried to finish my search with the word protest. I wrote Rittenhouse verdict and it wrote protest. It's
yep.
like, but I haven't seen any protests as of yet, but I do suspect that they're coming. I predict that we will see them tonight or tomorrow.
Oh, I've already seen a few. They're not. I've been watching a few getting live streamed on Twitter, and so far they're pretty
You know, I watched
small.
I watched Rupley was live streaming, and some chick like freaked out and started like screaming some crazy stuff about a baby and ripped her shirt open. It was crazy. And then
Yep.
she felt, you saw that? I was
Yep.
like, what is going on here? It was, yeah. So I'm sure there's just, and the crisis actor thing, I think you make a good point bringing that up. Like that's such a ridiculous thing that like you do see. I suspect that's like CIA or something that started to make it to where yes, everything is. I mean, really, when did that start? Probably Alex Jones with Sandy Hook and
Well, it
a
is.
lot of
It
that.
is, and this is. I remember my In fact, the video that got my first YouTube channel shut down was an analysis of the whole Christchurch, New Zealand incident.
Oh
Remember that?
yeah, that's right.
That crazy like communist Nazi eco terrorist guy went and shot a bunch of people in a mosque and live streamed it on Facebook.
Yeah,
And
what was the video you did on that? That's right. I remember speaking about that.
I did a video about how it was one of the big they used that event as one of the big pushes for censorship. Like in New Zealand, if you even had a copy on your hard drive of the video or his manifesto, you were something
Mm,
like 10 or 14 years in prison was the sentence for the crime of possessing evidence regarding that. And the media was trying to push to get the manifesto censored so nobody could read it. And my whole thing was just, well, hey, if you guys actually want to stop this kind of thing from happening, shouldn't we read the manifesto and see what this guy's motivations were? And like, duh.
mm.
And for me making that point, they shut down my entire YouTube channel for hate speech or some other. Um, but during that story, I noticed a huge uptick in all kinds of like glow in the dark posts and fed posts in the conspiracy world of them really trying hard to push the narrative that the entire thing was fake, that the video was CGI, that the victims were just crisis actors. And one of the main one of their main pieces of evidence for that theory was that if you watch the video, when his shells are ejecting from his AR-15, they actually kind of disappear. Like you'll see them kind of eject from the weapon and then kind of disappear and then hit the ground. And they're saying, "See, that's CGI. You can't see um, the shell casing. It's like disappearing and phasing in and out of existence." But I know from GoProing myself shooting my AR-15 that that's a frame rate issue.
Right.
And it's very easily like
And we spoke
debunked.
about this, right? Because you get at most 30 frames per second on a camera. Even a professional camera. I mean, if we're going
Mm-hmm.
in slow motion, if you're filming in slow motion, you can get 60 frames per second or
And he
120
was
frames.
live streaming it too, so
Right.
it was
So
even. more
right on
compressed.
his GoPro, he was live streaming, and I've seen that video. That video, it's
Oh, it's
horrible.
real too, and you can
It's real.
the other thing too is they were saying, oh, it's they're blanks, and those are you can actually see the
It's
rounds
real.
impacting the, but yeah, it's very very real. And the same thing, I spent a lot of time debunking a lot of the conspiracy people around Vegas too, because um, I was able to put a lot of that footage into my audio software and kind of like that's how I figured out what kind of gun he was using by analyzing the fire rate. That's how I knew it wasn't a bump stock, because you can basically like find out the beats per minute. You know, like if you're BPMing a track when you're DJing, it's the same thing. You just count the beats per minute, and it was a very consistent um, fire rate. But through doing that, I was also able to debunk a lot of the people who had theories about where the gunshots were coming from and things like that. But
So, so,
anytime there's
so
an
you don't
event
buy
like
into
this,
the second shooter there in Vegas, then, coming from a second shooter, two shooters there.
oh, I absolutely do. In fact, I think there are more than two.
Oh,
And
really?
I have musician friends on the ground in Vegas that night who had gigs there that night, and they've confirmed a lot of like for example, there were shootings going on all up and down the Vegas Strip for an hour after the concert shooting, and nobody talks about that. So yeah, there are definitely multiple shooters. I'm just talking about there were a lot of people trying to deflect away from where the shots
Yeah.
were actually coming from, and that always the conspiracy community is full of agents who are always trying to like steer. Oh, it's all fake. You know, it's
Mhm.
all fake. Just don't worry about it. It's all an op. There's nothing you can do about it. You're never going to be able to figure it out. It's all just fake. And
Yeah, and it's interesting because like a lot of what when I did my own research into that, I always with those things I just stay away from what people are saying, and I'll just if I feel like I need to, then I'll do my own. If I hear some things that don't line up, and I just remember his brother saying the only way that could be my brother is if he said he was like the alien from Men in Black. He like ripped his face off and became the I was like, what? So that was a crazy statement. That is, there's no way his brother could have done that. And then I think he worked for, I can't remember exactly which military contractor he worked for, but
wasn't it Lockheed? I
I
think
think
it
it
was
was
Lockheed.
connected to
Yeah.
Lockheed. Yeah, that sounds right. So yeah, I mean, when I see those things and I think back to, like, I mean, back to 1999, Colorado, I lived out there when, Columbine happened, and I mean, everything really changed back then. But I don't know, those are different incidents than with Rittenhouse. I think with Rittenhouse, we just had I mean, we had this civil unrest, which was absolutely a psyop of the media running the George Floyd story and creating all this, and it just kept going on. And with this, I think they just knew with everyone filming, everyone having cameras, that they would just get something out of it, and we got this out of it, the Rittenhouse
Well, yeah,
trial.
that's another thing that I saw a lot of people in the conspiracy world. And when I say like conspiracy theorist, obviously like that's a term that gets thrown at people like you and I all the time as a pejorative, and I don't mean it that way. I mean the people that literally just are like the opposite of people who watch. I think that people who just like watch conspiracy theory videos and just repeat that are no different than people that watch CNN and just repeat that. Like
Hmm.
neither one of them are doing their own research. They
Hmm.
just have different angles that they're coming from. But so I'm talking about like actual conspiracy theorists who get all of their shit from like YouTube stupid videos about how everything's fake and it's all CGI crisis actors, like that caliber of truther or researcher.
Yeah, watching Facebook videos all day and sharing them.
Right. Yeah, that's not research at all.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, going through and finding out someone's name, reading about them, things like that. Yeah, I mean, read a book, turn your television off. That's my
Yeah.
message for the night. But yeah, the Rittenhouse thing is different though. It's
Hmm.
definitely different. I don't think it's any kind of. I don't believe that there are really crisis actors. Uh, Again, like you don't even need crisis actors. Like people need to they need to realize that, like, first of all, people are very like if you look at some of the media, like I was saying before on the left, you see like, and again, like I feel horrible that people died, like they did a video interview with the woman, the young woman who lost her man that day, you know and they're like,
Oh,
I don't know.
Huber's girlfriend. Yeah.
Right. You know, she's got like dyed hair. Right. And the guy
Yeah.
who ran up, I think he tried to hit him with the skateboard right there.
Huber.
And
Yeah.
right. So, you know, and she's upset, and yeah, it's hurtful, but you can just see like what the media is trying to do with her message. It just, they're trying to cause more divide and conquer. And, you know, I just think we need to wake people up to that so that we don't have that.
Well, see, this is the conflict that I always get into when I cover these like obvious culture war psyops, is that like I don't want to add more chatter to the narrative already, you know, and I don't want to play into the like, oh, everyone's got to talk about Rittenhouse, so you better talk about Like, I don't want to play into that, but at the same time,
Mm,
it's important to expose the fact that all, you know, that we are being told to talk about this and that we are being force fed this stuff. And so it's a really delicate balance to like, same with Covington. Like, the reason I made a documentary about Covington Catholic situation was not because I cared about defending Nick Sandman or MAGA bros or anything like that, but it was because it was such a perfect example of how the media literally creates things out of thin air to get us fighting with each other.
right.
And so on that level, it's still really important to take part in these kind of debates, but it's tricky to figure out how deep you should go into it, you know.
Right. And you went into it when it first started, didn't it? Didn't you do like an analysis of a lot of the footage of the shooting?
Oh, in Kenosha, yeah, because I had already been following like all of those riots and protests, and I had done a full breakdown on Charlottesville and all of that stuff. So I was already very familiar with what was going on. And as soon as I heard that a right winger shot a left winger, I was up all night archiving live streams from Kenosha. Like that night, I watched like hours and hours of live streams from the entire night and got like a feel for the entire night and how it unfolded and how the vibe changed and what exactly happened. A lot of those went missing the next day, you know.
Mm,
So that was another reason I guess I felt obligated to be in this particular fight, is because I had been there right when it actually happened. And this is one of those rare cases where my overall opinion of the situation and what happened and what the truth is hasn't changed since August 25th of 2020,
mm,
because really the trial didn't bring out much new information at all. Like there were a couple new camera angles and a couple new witnesses who just confirmed the same thing that we already knew back when it happened. And that's another thing the media is doing is like CNN backtracked hard today, and they were doing this piece about how like, well, this is why he won. And their whole cope was like, oh, well, the trial brought all this new information and we got it wrong because we didn't have the information until the trial came out. But all of the examples they gave were stuff that we've known since day one. It wasn't new information. It's
mm.
at all.
That's interesting. That's interesting that CNN would report that way because, again, I've seen nothing but just like what you explained there. It's like it reminds me of the media when the Rodney King stuff happened.
Yeah.
You know, it does. Like, and that's not to say again that I don't know. You know, I don't have an opinion on either way. Like, I don't know. I don't really don't know because again, I think it's bad that people died. I think it all could have been avoided if they could all just wake up and stop following left and right politics.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
Yeah.
moral of the story for me. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I see these people, I see that footage of them all running and him falling on the ground and shooting people with his AR. And all I think of is like, if you people could just realize that the people you're voting for and fighting over don't give two squats about you, and they're the same and they play for the same team and it's really us
They're
versus
the same.
them, then you would like this wouldn't have happened, right?
Exactly.
We could stop these
Exactly.
things, if people could just wake up to that fact.
Yeah, it's crazy how much in common my right wing and left wing, and I mean, I'm kind of the further ends of that spectrum, how much they actually have in common. You know, how much they have
Mm,
way more in common than they actually have against each other. But the divide and conquer game is so
yeah, mind control
effective.
works very well. Yeah, that mind control works really good. It's, well, you've got the manual, so
Yeah. Let me read you a quote from I actually have the CIA psyops manual, and
Yeah.
there's a passage from it that I've shared quite a bit over the last couple years. Here it is right here. Specific jobs will be assigned to other elements in order to create a quote martyr for the cause, leading the demonstrators into a confrontation with authorities so as to provoke riots or shootings, which may cause the death of one or more persons who would become martyrs. A situation which should be taken advantage of immediately against the regime so as to create greater conflicts.
Mm, wow.
That's it's literally like all of the the 2020 riots were right out of that playbook.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, as you were reading that, I was just picturing the George Floyd protests,
Yep.
and it's interesting because most people would read that and see that it's aimed at foreign nations, but it's that's not what it's being used. I mean, it's totally been used on us.
hmm Well, this actually came from this specific field manual came from the Nicaragua situation in the 80s. So
Yeah,
this
it's
was
the
a
guerrilla warfare,
CIA
right?
man.
Psychological.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah. So what year did that book come out?
I forget when it leaked or got declassified, but it was authored back in the mid 80s, like
Mm,
85,
'80s.
around the
Okay.
time of yeah.
Mm, Cold War. Yeah.
This
Mm,
is when the US was backing right-wing anti-communist death squads basically to fight against the leftist regime in Nicaragua.
right. And so when you said earlier that in Kenosha the police were pushing the protesters, wasn't there I I there were some of the witnesses are like a group of armed militias that were there with Kyle, right? Or not with Kyle or what?
Mhm.
I see. I don't really know the facts again, but is that what you're referring
Well,
to?
there
Those
were
guys?
yeah, and there were different factions. It's not like that the like every right winger down there with a gun was part of the same club. Like there were different businesses that asked different groups of people to protect their businesses, and different quote unquote patriot militia types decided independently to go down there. And
Yeah.
the guy, if I remember, I think it's the same guy, but if I remember right, the guy who was warning the left wing protesters about how the cops were pushing them into the right wing militia was that he was a guy that was like an ex combat vet, and he had gone down there
Yeah.
independently.
Well, I have to say, like, I don't think that how do I put this? Like, I don't really agree. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't really see a whole lot of moral. I don't really know what saying like I'm gonna go, stand up. If the facts are that Kyle, goes somewhere where he's not from just to go. But at the same time, you can say the same things about the protesters, right? Like that are out there. I mean, again, like people don't know what you're fighting for, and a lot of them. And that almost makes me sound racist saying that, but it's not. It's because of knowledge. I mean, these things are done on purpose. I mean, for this reason. I mean, there's a reason that
Mm-hmm.
all of the deaths that happened throughout 2020 were not reported. And I'm talking, I mean, it doesn't take me long. I follow like some hood channels on YouTube of people. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's a lot of stuff.
Yep.
And there's a reason that we saw George Floyd and at the timing right after the opening up of our country, right?
Mm-hmm.
uh I mean, these things are on purpose. People need to realize that. So that's why I don't really like pointing a finger either at Kyle or the other side, like because I feel like they've both been fooled into a psyop on both sides.
Totally. Yeah, they're all victims of propaganda and
Right.
psyops and all
And
of
then
that.
see, you use the word victim, then I feel like they're both, if they're both victims, they're also both guilty in a way, because
Yeah.
they don't, yeah, like ignorance is not really a great excuse. I mean, if you're ignoring something that's there, the evidence is available, but you're too
Unless
busy following.
and
Go ahead.
this is the nuance that I feel like is important for like Kyle's motivations as a person. And again, we can't forget the fact that he was literally a fucking kid, like 17 when it happened.
Yeah,
So
and you can feel that energy in the trial. I didn't really, yeah, that's a good point to make. I'm glad you said that.
but like my original takeaway from like that day, like when it all took place, and I kind of watched all the videos and pieced it together, figured out what really happened. um it was really clear that he wasn't down there to like start shit or kill a commie or any of that. He was, you could just tell, like just watching human to human, that he had good intentions. But my takeaway at the end of that day was still like, shit, dude, you're still dumb for going down there. Like what
Exactly. That's my
you
thing.
like I wouldn't have got that's but I even kind of had to walk back from that as I researched more into him, his history, and who he was as a person. Sorry, my cat's just knocked over my mic. um
He's a cop or one
and
or no.
well, yeah, total like Boy Scout. uh I spend my weekends volunteering at the fire department and taking, EMT medical first aid classes, and I want to be a policeman when I grow up so I can help the community. And he was like one of those total like Boy Scout public service type nerds.
Yeah.
And so like who else would you expect to actually go down there with those kinds of intentions?
Yeah.
Like he is the perfect archetype of the type of person that's actually going to do that for seemingly innocent reasons. And the whole thing about him crossing state lines is fucking irrelevant, because his house was literally on the state line, and he worked in Kenosha. His dad lived in Kenosha, his best
Oh,
friend.
really?
Yeah, like he like if you look at the state line on a map, his house is like next to it. Like and Kenosha is 15 miles away. And he was there every day for work. He worked as a lifeguard. So
Wow.
that
So
that whole
yeah,
like,
that's interesting because a lot of the media I've seen is totally like, yeah, come from out of state, no business being there. Like again, the guy who died, his girlfriend, I mean, that's all she kept saying is like he had no business there. He came from out of state. But I mean, if he works in Kenosha, his dad lives there. I mean, come on.
and a lot of like Gage Grosskreutz, the guy that got his bicep vaporized and survived, he came from Milwaukee, which was almost 3 times the distance away from Kenosha that Rittenhouse came
Right.
from.
On the
And
other side.
he was like a professional protester. Like he had been following the protests around he'd been following them around like they're the Grateful Dead, like all over the state of Wisconsin.
Right.
So like everything they're accusing Kyle of
That
actually
guy's guilty
applies
of.
way more. And then Rosenbaum is the one who really interests me, because he fits such that pattern of feds using mental patients as patsies, and like the underwear bomber situation. And there's a lawsuit going on right now where the feds were trying to radicalize this mentally ill kid and create like an Oklahoma City 2.0 situation. And the kid's parents are actually suing the feds for entrapment, like as that trial is going on right now. And
Wow.
that's a common practice. So when I heard that Rosenbaum had been randomly discharged from a mental facility and then dropped off on the street that day, that really piqued my interest for sure. So
I
I would
mean,
love to know more about his background beyond his crazy criminal history. But
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because as soon as I heard a little bit about him, I was like, oh yeah, wow. And again, like, yeah, why are they saying like some of the witnesses were saying that who is it? So is Rosenbaum the guy who first chased him and threw the bag at him? Or that's
yeah. Uh-huh.
okay, yeah. So yeah, that's the one they were saying he was acting insane and crazy and didn't know you know, he was just, instigating with people. Like some of the witnesses, at least, were saying that. I did see some of that from my witnesses. So,
Oh, he was. And again, this was something that we all saw on night one when the live stream videos came out that day
yeah,
when it happened. We all knew about Rosenbaum back then. Like,
yeah.
it's not new information whatsoever.
And that's what I'm saying. So, like, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, people need to think about the idea that, yeah, why was this man, just, I mean, if you haven't done a little bit of research into psychology and how these things happen, I mean, you need to. I mean, Dylan Klebold, I mean, these there's a lot of psychiatry that is involved in some of these events. So I don't rule it out. I think it
I
would.
don't rule it out either. At the same time, I'm not saying Rosenbaum was some MK Ultra fed plant. You know, I need to see evidence before I make that claim, but he does fit that pattern. He also fits the pattern of a guy who had literally just tried to kill himself a couple days prior, which is why he was in the mental. He was literally yelling, shoot me, bust on me. He was literally asking for it. You know, it was kind of like a suicide by cop situation. So it could have easily been that situation too. Maybe the mental hospital just let him out because they were letting everyone out because of the riots. But we don't know because all of the records are conveniently missing. So
Are they?
yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
So there's definitely some suspicion over that guy, but I'm not sure.
So the Rosenbaum medical records are missing.
Yeah, last I checked, the hospital he was staying at, there's records of him being there, I think, but there's no record of his discharge or why he was discharged. I think that's the. I might be wrong about that, but that's what I remember from the last time I looked into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
Because people were obviously asking why was he discharged that day, and they're, oh, I don't know, we don't have the records, we're not sure.
And that's on video. What you described, him saying, "Shoot me," shoot on me, or right?
Yep.
He's acting real crazy. And again, I mean, I'm sorry, it's unfortunate he lost his life, but like you just said, I think he was. Did they say he was suicidal in the mental institute?
That's why he was there. He had OD'd on heroin in front of a McDonald's, tried to kill himself. And so that's why he was in the mental hospital in the first place. And then the day of the riots, he got second day of the riots because there had already been 2 days. And that's another thing. This all popped off in Kenosha on August 23rd, 2 days prior. And the whole reason that the police were, because all the conservative argument is like Kyle wouldn't have had to go out there if the police were actually doing their job and protecting the city. That's why Kyle had to go out there and be a hero or whatever. And the reason that one of the big reasons the cops had stand down orders is because the left wing protesters were brandishing firearms and rifles and taking shots, and like they were the ones that brought guns into that situation from day one at the very beginning. And that's why the cops had more of a hands-off approach, because the left wing side of it was heavily armed long before the right wing ever showed up.
And that doesn't surprise me. I saw that in Dallas personally. Like there was so much crazy, like very very Antifa looking is what these a lot of the protesters on that left side, or Black Lives Matter, even, not all of them, obviously. And some of them are just out there just because, like, I ain't got nothing to do. Let's go. I live in Dallas. It's popping off in my neighborhood. Let's
Shit's
go.
popping off. Yeah.
And for me, like I don't know if I'd ever really be the guy who's like, yeah, I'm just gonna take my AR, let's do this. Like, I don't know if I'd ever be that unless I have to. But for me, I've always been the guy who's like, I'll take my camera, let's go. I want to get some footage. I love documenting that stuff. So I went down there and it was crazy. The live stream I did in Dallas when the George Floyd, it was crazy. And you could see like bricks. There were like piles of bricks set up next to big glass buildings. And you were like, okay, come on.
Yeah.
That's so obvious.
Yep.
There were people walking by purposely breaking stuff. And like, it would drive me crazy because the things that you would see broken would be like small businesses or glass buildings that were nice. But then across the street, you'd see like the Fox building or AT&T. It's like, yo, you guys are totally going after the wrong people. That's frustrating for me in these situations, like that's who's causing this, the media. I mean, damn, you got Fox.
Yeah. Why aren't we gathered outside of
CNN?
There was in Atlanta, the CNN headquarters did finally get hit up, and that was pretty hilarious to watch.
That was a good thing.
Because they were literally like CNN was literally running pro BLM coverage live from that building while it was being attacked by BLM. It was so beautiful.
Oh man. Wow.
I think the reason CNN is walking. the reason CNN is walking things back today is because they know they're about to get lawsuit. Just like Nick Sandmann, the next several generations of his family are going to be set for life because he sued the Covington kid. He sued CNN and Washington Post and New York Times, and they know Kyle's coming for him next. So I
Oh,
think that's
really?
why they're trying to walk it back. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't know any of that. Well, I didn't really think about that.
I, I saw that I saw this great meme today about it was like a a fake, the premise was like a fake custody trial, and it said Nick Sandmann and Kyle Rittenhouse get joint custody of CNN. That's how I closed out my Covington documentary, was a prediction that Nick Sandmann was about to get filthy rich by going after and successfully suing all of the, and he did. Like 6 months later, he freaking cleaned up. He's a multi 100 millionaire now.
So you think Kyle's going to do the same?
So, oh, absolutely. I know he is. His mom already hinted at like they're going to sue Biden, and yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I hope they. I said the other day, I hope she gets a mansion. She deserves it.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, because again, what just as a I don't see Kyle as a right winger, and I don't see the protesters necessarily. It depends on which ones we're talking about, as commies or Antifa. Like at the end of the day, they're human beings, and something that really personally, it like I never get emotionally invested into stuff I research. I'm sure you don't either. We've been doing it way too long. It's like when you're a doctor, you can't cry for every patient that dies on the operating table, sort of thing, or you'd go insane. But like what really no pun intended triggered me was watching him get made fun of for having that breakdown on the stand, and people saying that he was fake crying, and right off the bat, like he wasn't faking crying because he wasn't crying. He was having a PTSD induced anxiety attack, which is something I have personal experience with. And so I know for a fact that he wasn't faking that wasn't acting for sympathy, and to see some kid who's like on trial for his life having a PTSD attack over having had to kill people, like I just, as another human being, I had tremendous empathy for that situation, and to see him just get mocked for it, and ironically by the people who came up with the concept of trigger warnings and destigmatizing mental illness, and they're the ones that are piling on him, and like that would be upsetting, to be honest. And also I have footage of him from the Antioch Police Department when he turned himself in that night. And one of the first things he asks the police officers is if he can talk to a counselor, because, quote, I don't want to be one of those people that lives with PTSD for the rest of their life. Like,
wow.
Hours after it happened, he was already, all of his friends said he was as white as a ghost, and he was shaking, and he was crying and sobbing, and I killed somebody. Like he wasn't a guy that was like happy about killing people. It's going to fuck him up for the rest of his life. And
Oh, yeah, that'll stick with him forever.
yeah, he wasn't down there playing video games, like that's, he took someone's life, and you can see that it genuinely upset him.
It's an interesting point that you say. I mean, just that you would say that, because I saw a lot of signs outside of the courtroom of people holding up like Xbox looking controllers on their signs, talking about like sport killing or something. It's like, it's not what he was doing. I do agree with you that that's not what he was doing. You can see it. And I don't think, I kind of thought that there were like some kind of like physical tics in his face. And sometimes like he wasn't crying. It's interesting that I don't know where he was made fun of and what you're specifically referring to, but I will say I've seen a whole bunch of clickbait that looks like he's crying, and they're trying to get people to click on those videos because it looks like he's crying on the stand, and he's not. He's just squinting and looking down, and it's such a ridiculous. You can tell they just worked to find that exact frame to clickbait.
Well, it's like during, I think like day 1 or day 2 of the trial, at some point, you're in the courtroom for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. At some point he yawned, and they took a snapshot. Kyle's yawning during his trial or what. He doesn't even care, obviously. And they do
Oh, of
that,
course.
anytime there's a televised trial, they always do this shit, but
Of course.
no, there is, when he gave his testimony on the stand, he had a full on, and I mean, it was a textbook PTSD induced panic attack. I mean, it was by
Right.
the book, which is
Yeah, he was
why it's so
stuttering, and yeah, there was like heavy breathing, and
hyperventilating. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
hyperventilating. And that happens. That's happened to me. I don't know if it's PTSD or anything, but just anxiety attack in general. Like I could see
Yeah.
that. I could see that. And I mean, you're on national television. You're in front of this thing. You're up there for murder. I mean, come on. Like, what are you gonna be? You're 18, like you said. You're baby.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you're gonna be feeling up there? Like,
Well, today when he got the not guilty verdict, he basically collapsed. He went into panic mode again, just out of relief, like tears of joy kind of thing. But like he's clearly very emotionally affected. His face is all broken out. He's gained a bunch of weight. Like I can't imagine being in that situation. Like I went on trial for my freedom when I was 16 when I got in some trouble. And I was looking at a few years, and that freaked me the fuck out. Like I could imagine the rest of my life after having to have killed people.
right. And like you said, even with the not guilty verdict, I mean, he's got to live with that.
Yeah, and he's got to look over his shoulder for the rest of his life, and
Yeah, and
what
that's
it's done to
another.
his mother.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Is like he's got to look over his shoulder. His mom's got to be, the mom. It's like Dylan's mom from Columbine. She's done these videos of,
Yep.
and that's unfortunate too. Like, and not to compare Kyle to a school shooter or anything. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I think the thing that I take away big time from all this is when you said, like, at the same time of Kyle not having bad intentions, at the same time, it's kind of dumb. I wouldn't go do that. Well, I agree with that, but I also think you see that man who he shot, that was dumb of him to run up behind someone with an AR-15 in their hand. Like, dude, you didn't need to do that, and you didn't need to get shot, you
This is
know?
the point that I make with so many of the BLM shootings too. Like I watched BLM freak out this one criminal. I think it was in Chicago. He literally pulled a pistol and fired 2 shots point blank at an officer's head, somehow missing the officer, and then the officer took him out. And they were saying that was unjustified. And it's like, and I follow all the body cam channels on YouTube, and
Yeah.
I've watched. So I've now seen just under 900 police shootings on body cam, and
Yeah,
so
I watch
many
a
of
lot of
them.
that stuff too.
It's just like, dude, what do you expect if you pull a gun or a knife on anybody? I don't care if they're a cop or a Kenosha Kyle or a Grape Street Crip. It doesn't matter. You're gonna get shot if you pull a gun on. If you make a violent attempt at someone who's armed, prepare to get shot. Like, what do you expect is going to happen one person to another?
I
It's
mean,
got nothing to do with race or police, or in a lot of cases. I'm not saying that I'm not here to defend police at all, but
and the dude who got shot, or as you say, vaporized his bicep, wasn't he carrying a pistol or aiming a pistol or firing a pistol?
yeah, he was trying to, what he did is he was chasing after Rittenhouse, and Rittenhouse got the drop on him. So he Gage Grosskreutz is the guy's name. He realized that Rittenhouse had a shot on him, so he put his hands up in the air and faked surrender, and waited for Rittenhouse to get distracted, and then he went back to trying to put the gun to Rittenhouse's head and cap him, and that's when Rittenhouse shot him in the arm, literally disarmed him.
Yeah. And that all happens so
But
fast in a split second, and he's on the
nobody's
ground.
asking.
I mean, that man's on the ground. What do you do? I
Yeah,
mean, you have to put yourself in that. That's the one thing that I did immediately when this happened. If I'm on the ground and there's that many people coming at me, I mean, dude, I'm scared, first of all. But at the same
and there
time,
were other people too that they surrendered, and as soon as they stopped running after Kyle, he like he only shot the people that tried to kill him. There were tons of other people running. He didn't shoot any of them. He
yeah, and he
only
did
shot
go
the
try
people
to
that were
surrender immediately. The cops just didn't do their job and stop him. They just drove right
right.
past him. That wasn't his fault. I mean, he did throw his hands up, and he assumed they were pulling up to get him, and they just told him to get out of the street. which
But
they
it's
made
just
a
so
big
it's
deal
so
of.
weird how they're painting the alleged victims as heroes. But it's like Gage Grosskreutz, the guy with the Glock who got his bicep shot off. Like I said, he was like a career protester that was following the protest from city to city. So that whole argument about Kyle had no business there. He was just there to, take part in a protest because it was fun. Well, that's what this guy was doing, and his gun was illegal because he had charges previous to using a gun while intoxicated or something. So Kyle's gun was actually legal in the end, but so everything they accuse Kyle of is actually applicable to a lot of the guys or to the 3 guys that Kyle took out. But
At least the one, yeah, at least the one victim, right? That didn't
well,
die,
especially
that
him, the guy with the
survived.
gun. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I had an interview I saw with him. He said he was like standing up for his gun rights, and then condemning Kyle
Right.
for shooting people. And I just think that's kind of I don't know, that's just idiotic to to be down at like,
But yeah, there's
and
just
if what
so
you
much
say is true,
hypocrisy.
yeah, and if what you say is true about him being like a career protester, then yeah, that's totally hypocritical to say, this guy shouldn't be down there with a gun, bro. You shouldn't be down there with a gun. Like, if you're
Well, yeah,
gonna
it's like,
say,
well, okay, if like what was Kyle doing there? Fair enough, but what was Rosenbaum doing there, and what was Gage doing there, and what was Huber doing there? Like, it does should not apply to everyone. It's
I thought to myself, what the hell is that guy doing telling him to shoot him? Like, he didn't seem to be on either side. And now that you brought up the whole mental patient and being a perfect, character for that, I was like, wow, that's kind of resonating with me. Like, because I was real off about, like, man, why is he acting like that? He didn't seem to really necessarily be against, he didn't really seem to be left or right. He just seemed to be pissed off.
well, even his girlfriend said on camera, I've got the clip where she's saying, I have, she's kind of mad at him. Like, she has the same question. What were you doing there? She doesn't know what he was even doing there. And he wasn't really a political type person.
Oh,
So
really?
to me, it looked like, and this is another thing I've learned from watching body cam channels is I don't want to put a number on it, but a large percentage of those police shootings are suicide by cop situations, right?
Right.
And from having seen dozens, if not a couple hundred of those, that's what Rosenbaum looked like to me. Like he looked like he was just out there to start shit and possibly get hit. He just didn't care, if you look into his situation and where he was coming from that day and his life situation, like he literally was suicidal. He had just attempted it days before.
Yeah, and if he just got out of facility, we can assume he was intoxicated on something. Like, I think that's a good assumption. Even if he wasn't intoxicated, he could have been coming down off of something that they gave him in there, or, I mean,
Right. Who knows? Who knows? They
yeah, we
pump
don't
people
know.
so full of stuff there. Yeah.
And he was acting crazy. I saw a couple videos. I was like, wow, why is he acting like that? And it's like,
Well, and
especially if
he was
someone's
a
got an
crazy
AR.
person.
Why would you run at someone with an AR? I mean, I just don't understand that
That
personally for
wasn't
me.
right. The media that they ran this narrative of Kyle brought a gun to a fist fight. It's like, no, motherfucker, that guy brought fists to a gunfight. Like,
Right, he threw his bag and chased him, and there was a lot of people, and I don't think in that first, from what I could tell, he couldn't really. I don't think Kyle could really tell what the hell. It just looked like a bunch of people were chasing him in that parking lot when the first
oh,
shots.
and gunshots were going off as well, and he
Right,
did
that
make
weren't
every
all
attempt to
his.
get away.
Right,
Yeah.
there were other gunshots coming from other areas. Right, you can hear him in the video.
And
Right,
suspiciously, because of the way that, yeah, we even know the guy that fired them too. And suspiciously, he was not brought into the trial because the DA ran this trick where he charged that guy for a gun violation, which meant that his trial was going to somehow conflict with the Rittenhouse trial, and so the
what?
defense wouldn't be able to cross-examine. Yeah, dude, there was so much shady shit going
Are
on
you kidding me?
in the
That is some.
background. Oh
That is
yeah.
some perversion of justice
Yeah.
shit right there, bro.
Also, Gage Grosskreutz, the guy that became a permanent leftist when Kyle disarmed him.
I
The
suspect
guy with
that's
the
all
Glock.
because of I suspect that all ties into the Jesuits judge in some way.
Well, so this guy Gage, the who was supposed to be the prosecution's star witness, but it ended up just helping Kyle by admitting that it was self-defense. This guy, he had a whole rap sheet of felonies that got suspiciously cleared 6 days before the DA put him on the stand. They just wiped his whole rap sheet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
So yeah,
interesting.
there's all kinds of really shady stuff going on in the background.
Of the trial.
And yeah, like you said, the judge definitely needs to be looked into as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that the judge is a Jesuit and then the prosecutors seem to have like no knowledge about gun safety or just firearms in general. That I could tell from the little bit I looked at. And then yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I looked into some of the attorneys and other people involved in the trial and saw more Jesuit affiliation. So that tells me that this
Well,
is
I think
more
the
than
DA is
theater.
ex-military. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Yeah. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, and then you tell me that they've literally done some trick where the DA charges someone with a gun conviction who is involved in this big thing and should be on trial. I mean, I think that should be part of the trial because those guns, you can hear those gunshots going off in that video, and that could have definitely played a big role in why he pulled his trigger. He thought he was getting shot at. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. That's interesting. I didn't know that
Well, if I
aspect
remember
of it.
correctly, Kyle. Yeah. Well, the other really interesting question to be answered there is this guy that was firing off the gunshots right before Kyle shot Rosenbaum. He had been videoed and pictured with Rosenbaum pretty much all night. So a lot of people are theorizing that, you know, if Rosenbaum was in fact like some, you know, MK Ultra agent on the ground or something, then this guy was his handler.
Interesting.
But again, that's like
I
total
had,
conjecture. But
yeah,
it
yeah. I
is
hadn't
very,
heard that
very,
though.
very suspicious that this guy wasn't like a huge witness in the Rittenhouse trial, because he was there popping off gunshots as Kyle was about to shoot Rosenbaum. So he's like a key figure in this whole situation, and we didn't even hear from him. And
Not once in the 2
that's
weeks.
crazy, right?
Huh. Yeah. That is crazy. I didn't know that. And that tells me that, yeah, it's like I said, a perversion of justice. There's like totally some cover up going on, and that's to be expected. I mean, as soon as they made this a national story, and I was like, ah, and I could tell. I mean, just from some of the body language of what's going on in there, I was like, man, this is some of it's just theater. Obviously, most of the people are just, compartmentalized and don't know what's going on, but
See, and
you know,
that's the important nuance, is like there's people that take this super seriously and they think it's all on the level and this is the system doing its job. And then there's people that think it's literally all fake and it's done like on a Hollywood production soundstage somewhere. And it's like it's both. You know, not
yeah.
psyops aren't usually are not faked from the ground up. It's usually a mixture of several different um,
You
you know,
can't
it'll be
just
like an organic event that happens and then they spin it into a psyop, but it doesn't, like you said, compartmentalization is a huge thing that people need to understand.
Yeah,
You don't
I think that
you
what
don't
you're describing is totally a tactic that's been used. I think it's like CIA or NSA. It's like this truth meter thing, where like, the truth is right there in the middle, right? And if you start leaning a little bit towards the left, um,
Mhm.
which is like totally like the nonsense bullshit agenda that they're pushing us, then it's better to, it's like the what I think Yuri Bezmenov even talks about. It's like using your force against you, push you towards the crazy things. It's all crisis actors, Bigfoot and aliens did it, type of things, like push you to the outrageous, the flat
Mhm.
earthers and the QAnons and yeah, the demon eating, shapeshifters. And I do think that that's like a tactic just to, aside from shit coding,
It is.
things, it's like
It
it's like a push you. And really, I think it's twofold, because it's not just as a shit coding, which me and you have discussed before, right?
Mhm.
Which is like, we've covered that. And it's not just a to make it seem outrageous either, to where people are like, oh, that's that crazy David Icke stuff you're talking about. But I
Well, it's
think
like,
there's
yeah.
another level to it, which is, go ahead, what were you going to say?
Well, yeah, like Tucker Carlson, this right here is like the one of my favorite examples, recent ones of shit coding. So there's been this meme going around since like over a year ago in the meme sphere, where where they say Joseph Rosenbaum died doing what he loved most, trying to attack a minor because he was a pedophile, right? Haha. It's pretty
Mm.
funny. It's a good meme. But Tucker said it on Fox News the other night. And so all of the conservatives were like, oh my, like that, the rap battle meme. Everyone, oh my God, he just dropped the mic. And
Did he really?
it's like, yeah. And so that went from like a really good, like underground subversive kind of meme that kind of use
Gosh,
satire to show the truth to like a Fox News talking point.
do you know what that reminds me of? Creepy Joe.
Yep. Yep. That kind of stuff too.
Now it's Sleepy Joe. I mean, I hear that and I'm like, dude, oh, it's just disgusting. Yeah. So yeah, that's like another level of shit coding. It's like another, but when I say twofold, I mean more like they get people like me and you to actually fall for it. They get genuine people who are knowledgeable, who have done the research, who know better, to fall into one of the sides, um, or believe in the it's all CGI staged. Biden's in front of a green screen for absolutely no reason, which serves absolutely no purpose. Like these things, they don't make sense. Like you said, that's not how a psyop works. There's got to be organic, first of all, or it'll never work. There has to be an organic element to it. It's ridiculous. I think that's totally not a genuine thing.
Well, it's like
I
they
think
don't
genuine
they don't
people fall into it, but I don't think it's a genuine thing that was started. I think that was started as like a tactic, a CIA tactic, a cover up tactic. Alex Jones.
well, it is. It's called learned helplessness, and this comes from psychology. Learned helplessness is where you basically just condition an animal or a subject to just literally lay down and die and just accept their fate, that it's all hopeless. And
Mm. Oh yeah.
that's what they're doing. That's what that tactic is.
Oh yeah, and we see
But
that all
and
over
they
as
don't,
far as conspiracy goes. I mean, the idea that the new world order is inevitable and there's nothing we can do about it,
mm-hmm,
right? That's
right.
what you mean. Yeah.
And it's not like you said earlier that they kind of trick us into falling into one side or another, because they don't. Like, when's the last time they actually tricked you into playing team sports?
Right.
Like they don't actually do it, but what
2016.
the trick is, they yeah, they get other people to view you that, like, a lot of the things I'm saying about Rittenhouse, to someone that doesn't have a nuanced understanding, is going to sound exactly like, oh, well, I heard Tucker Carlson say that and he's a right-wing Nazi whatever, so that must be what you are, kind of,
Oh
just
yeah.
simply by the nature of you're either pro Kyle or anti Kyle.
Right. Which, so you're either
And
Republican or
I don't
Democrat,
I
or
don't
you're
buy into
racist
that
or you're not
whatsoever.
racist. Right.
Mhm.
That's what you're
Right.
saying. So it doesn't really put you into that, but it creates the personas that you are that for other people. I see what you're saying.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that way other people can go ahead and group you in there with the right wing Kyle supporters that are racist and the Tucker Carlsons
Mm-hmm.
that say he was hunting down a minor.
Yeah.
That's so, I didn't know he said that. That's so Tucker. Man, that guy, I hate that guy.
Yeah.
I really don't like that guy.
Oh yeah. He's such a snake, dude. He is such a bought and
Man,
paid for. He doesn't have any real principles. And he's basically like bragged about that. I've got all kinds of old appearances of him on like talk radio and podcasts before he was like really famous, and he's just a
really?
shitty person.
I've seen
I've
some
got,
old
yeah, videos of
Tucker,
him making.
like totally with different views. Like that's for sure. Like totally more libertarian than, that's for sure. But I didn't know that.
Oh, back when he wore a bow tie, yeah.
Yeah, when he wore a bow
Yeah.
tie. Yeah, you remember some of those videos? Yeah. But I didn't know there were older ones where he's just like, yeah, I have no principles. I mean, that's great because that's totally who he is. I mean, he's just, yeah, he's a tool. A good one, though. I mean, he's a good tool. He started talking about the Great
Oh, he's
Reset.
great at what he does. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Didn't he
Yeah.
get that letter
Oh,
from
speaking of that,
Yeah, go ahead.
the World Economic Forum just the other day, they had another big conference, and this was called the Great Narrative. And so this was like their propaganda conference for basically the Great Reset and all of that agenda. And so they had this big meeting called the Great Narrative where they got together to. It's just so on the nose, dude. And like, if you read the mission statement, it's like, oh, we're just getting together to talk about how to sell these ideas to you people.
It's just a narrative. Like,
Gotta love them.
it's just a great narrative. You fucking tools, just take it. You sheep. Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. The great narrative. You've got to be kidding me.
No, good stuff.
Just wow. Well, good talk, brother. That's a good spot to end it. I'm gonna have to go check out the great narrative. Wow. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, have fun with that one.
Thanks for everything, man.
Absolutely.
All right. Wolf Clan Media is funded and only able to function by its viewers and your continued support. Any and all donations or purchases made go right back into the company and the funding of further productions. In order to stay updated on the release dates, be sure to subscribe to the mailing list.